Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Rebirth, and today I would like to talk about Imperator Rome. This video is sponsored by Paradox Interactive, the creators of Imperator, so thank you very much for that. However, of course, all opinions in this video are my own. Imperator is a difficult beast to tackle, seeing as it wasn't entirely clear what its niche and identity truly were. It took many aspects from his predecessor Europa Universalis Rome, mixed in some aspects of newer Paradox games, and added some of its own innovations on top. While it was a functioning game, these elements did not create a common identity coherent enough to draw people in for a long time. Today, however, I'm here to tell you that the team behind Imperator Rome with a gigantic 2.0 update and the content pack focused on the Diadochi has not only found its niche and identity, they have absolutely crushed it. Now, what makes me say this? What is this mysterious identity of Imperator Rome? I had the pleasure of doing an interview with Imperator's game director Peter Nicholson, who online is likely known to some of you as Aheo. He took over development quite some time ago, and what I knew before this interview was that he leans much more towards a sandbox simulation type of game compared to the more arcade style that Imperator started out with. When the interview was happening, I still wasn't sure whether I should approach Imperator from a map painter, a character roleplay, or a warfare perspective. The interview had many interesting insights that I will share with you in other videos, but I want to show you the one answer that I consider absolutely fundamental, and after which the scales truly fell from my eyes. So, what sort of player is this game for now when it comes to who you're trying to deliver it to? And what is the overarching game vision? For example, is it more roleplay oriented, is it simulation heavy, or is it more board game oriented?
I think when Imperator was released, version 1.0, it was perhaps more on the perhaps slightly more arcadey. It certainly appealed to, was intended to appeal to fans of Universalis, but also with that Crusader Kings element of having the characters and so forth as well. I think a lot of the work that we've done since release has been on defining a more unique identity for Imperator, giving it its own thing rather than being a hybrid of other games. And that identity is something I've been working towards, and that is as it's a bit of a buzzword, perhaps I can explain what it means a little, and that is as a civilization builder. And what the civilization builder aspect of Imperator is how you define what your civilization becomes, which cultures you integrate, the benefits you gain from them. And with 2.0, things like really charting what your civilization can do through the use of things like the invention trees, the military tradition trees, and defining your identity as well as defining your appearance on the map, essentially.
So it is a civilization builder. After the interview, I put about 45 hours into the game testing this hypothesis, playing everything under the sun to see how consistent the quality of the game's mechanics would be in different scenarios. Tribes, Rome, Carthage, the Diadochi, Sparta, and then a very long campaign of Massalia, which has always been my favorite starting position. A Greek colony surrounded by barbarians, I mean, what's not to love there? And while Aheo was a bit reluctant whether civilization builder as a term would be understood the way he thought of it, I want to be a bit more brazen. In my evaluation, Imperator Rome 2.0 has the best peacetime gameplay that I have ever seen in any grand strategy game. There is no grand strategy game in which I live for peacetime the same way that I do here. When starting out on this update, I had initially focused on expansion, keeping the realm stable at all costs and finishing my focus trees. Board gaming, metagaming, if you will. However, my preferred playstyle is and always has been role-playing. If disaster is inevitable with the decisions my roleplay wants to make, then I want to embrace this disaster whenever I can, instead of viewing it as something that ought to be avoided at all costs. And Imperator is absolutely magnificent for people that play grand strategy games in this very way. So let's take a look at the reality of it all and on why I'm so in love with the huge changes made to Imperator in 2.0 and in the many free updates before it by inspecting my campaign as Massalia. In this campaign, I played on very hard and disregarded any sort of metagaming. I acted as my civilization would and as the people leading it would. For the first 50 years, I was primarily ruled by the oligarchs and traditionalists, both interested in consolidating their own internal power as well as disregarding non-Massalians whenever possible. And I played exactly like that. I handed out holdings to oligarch families whenever the oligarchs demanded it, effectively creating a state within a state. Families that gained so much money from their holdings and got so powerful that they would soon attempt to overthrow the Republic. I desecrated Gaul holy sites and built temples to the Hellenistic gods whenever the traditionalists lent me their power. I kept track of all important characters and the lives they went through simply by pinning all family leaders to the outliner. You can easily remember who matters in your Republic this way and what sort of plots they have going on. I also made sure to pin any outstanding minor characters, for example people with legendary martial abilities, so that I could consider adopting them should the necessity or the will arise. I treated friends of my Archon beneficial and would strike down rivals by imprisoning them, bringing them to trial and so on and so forth. Yes, even if that may cause a civil war. If my Archon said this happens, this would happen. Is this sort of gameplay that gives you a few incredibly powerful families, that even goes as far as making it so that they could rise up against you optimal play? Absolutely not. But Imperator Rome in 2.0 gives you such roleplay freedom that you can have 3 civil wars and still arise from it stronger. How do I know? Well, because that's exactly how many I had with Massalia. In 494, so not even 50 years after the game start, I was in a strong position. My coastal realm kept our home city safe, and Rome was willing to assist me as an ally for the time being. However, for the first time ever, a Democrat by the name of Pleistakos Alketi rose to power, and he held the position that Ligurians were indeed civilized and desired to give them citizenship. He had a rival for a long time at that point by the name of Philon Gillipede, who was a traditionalist and desired that all non-Massalians be granted nothing but endless forced labor as slaves. And so he plotted against me, and we clashed in the Bull, the Massalian Senate. While I came out on top in this occasion, this could have ended differently. Philon Gillipede was banished to Macedon and the Republic was safe, for now. See, a Democrat like Pleistakos in power was unheard of. Previously, oligarchs and traditionalists had ruled the Republic virtually as tyrants, only helping themselves and their own, so Democrats rarely, if ever, voted for the acting government. And it happened that just 15 years later, a traditionalist rose to power and he was but a puppet of a traditionalist faction that, in their own right, held 53 seats out of the 100 available in the Bull. And they demanded the Ligurians lose their citizen privileges again. And so they did. He went even further. It was decreed that only Massalians would be free, and everyone else should live in shackles. Radical. Suboptimal, certainly. I mean, the Massalian population was tiny. There was virtually no army available, seeing as only citizens serve in them and only Massalians are citizens. And we have like 2 of them. Massalia made it work. Remember, this is a civilization builder. What we didn't have in manpower, we had in our libraries. Our technology advanced faster than anywhere else, and I inspected the innovation trees that had been introduced with 2.0 carefully, selecting and moving towards anything that would support this trade-heavy and slave-reliant state. Massalia became a beautiful, gigantic city, a metropolis. I even went so far as to build a shrine to Artemis on its premises, seeing as the ancestors that settled these lands originally stem from Western Anatolia, a region that worships this goddess of fertility. I also saved up loads of money to build one of the amazing great works, and I have to say that they are significantly better than what I expected. Visually and gameplay-wise, they are highly modular, and the new Oracle of Massalia would further establish my civilization as the center of Greeks in the West. What really won me over was the long peaceful gameplay period that then began from 511 to around 580. While I participated in a small Roman-led war against the northern barbarians, and then in a small war of my own to reclaim the lost Greek colony of Emporion, I spent 69 years just managing and shaping the Republic. Yeah, I know, it sounds weird, doesn't it? 69 years of being at peace most of the time. I've never been one for internal politics as an end in itself in these games, most of my activities commonly driven by future expansion plans. But in this game, hell, I would have been content if Rome had never collapsed, if all my future had occurred in these very specific lands. Massalia was a glorious, rich city, as large as Rome, Carthage or Alexandria. My road network was the best in the entire world. My state was virtually as corrupt can be, with almost all holdings in the entirety of my realm handed out to the important families. I founded colonies all over the northern lands that I conquered, so that the barbarian slaves would be administered by proper citizens. I prepared in my military tradition tree to, at some point in the future, pick up the Italic traditions, seeing as the Italic peoples were the only non-slaves in my realm and would, maybe, at some point in the future be accepted. I built up settlements and founded new cities as I saw fit and ended up with the most civilized area in the entire world. But then, things happened. After decades of oligarchic and traditionalist rule that led to some full pockets, all of a sudden, the Democrats had surged ahead, and it was time for justice. They desired nothing less than the utter annihilation of those that had exploited the wealth of Massalia and kept them down for more than a generation. They brought the heads of 3 other families to trial in the Bull. They won one case, revoked all holdings and banished him for all eternity. They lost the other 2 cases but utterly crushed the opposition in the following civil wars, leaving none of the traitors alive. Of course, this was radical behavior, and the smell of tyranny and desperation clung to the air. But you'd think that it would ultimately strengthen the Republic, right? All of its enemies are defeated. Well, wrong. In this new power vacuum, It was the Alexarchid family, a young family that had sprung up no more than 40 years ago from an ambitious former slave. They were ready to rumble, and rumble they did. For the vengeance of the populists was not yet over. The 2.0 innovation tree is great, because on one of its endpoints, if you do meet the requirements, you can go down the path of a dictatorship, tyranny. And it is exactly what this ambitious family did. Kephisodoros Alexarchid, a talented public speaker, brought the remaining bull behind him, declaring himself temporary dictator during a very short war that essentially he just declared so that he could get this privilege. Afterwards, he declared that there was no way forward but to grant him a lifetime mandate, as the enemies of the Republic were still everywhere. And after that, civil war. Of course, his rise had been fast, and his downfall could have been faster had it not been for yet another former slave, Archaios the Floppy Xenarid. What was meant to surely be a mocking nickname, the Floppy, would become a big threat. Big Flopper, as I lovingly came to call him, won not just the civil war for his friend and leader, he also decimated the Carthaginians that desired to lay claim to all of Iberia as this civil war was going on. He annihilated them in a series of battles in southern Gaul after they had begun to pour in. He never wavered. He never lost a battle, and so Massalia grew once more. Only a few years later, the mighty Rome fell into a massive civil war, for a tyrant desired to rise to power there as well, which is something, by the way, that I'd never seen in the original Imperator Rome. But now, hey, if you're a democracy, if you go down the innovation tree, and if you have a leader popular enough and with enough Senate support, everybody can do it. Of course, Kephisodoros and Big Flopper used this opportunity and grabbed the lands of the Ligurians for themselves, but not before Big Flopper's legion made it all the way to Rome, sacking it. After everything was said and done, Massalia had destroyed so many armies of Rome that the population of the city of Rome had halved, from 160 to 80. Incredible. This is only possible because the armies now in this new system are bound to population. If a levied unit dies, there's a good chance that its pop will also actually die, and I'll be honest with you, we annihilated them, because Big Flopper is Big Flopper. With peace now restored, Kephisodoros, who was on his deathbed, adopted Big Flopper and made him his heir. Both sons of Kephisodoros were disappointing and also sickly, so, well, he just went ahead and gave Big Flopper the reins. Kephisodoros was declared a god, and Big Flopper's reign saw another massive land grab in Iberia after Carthage dared declare another war against Massalia. But it was primarily a period of peace and build-up. As massive as Big Flopper's victories were, he was a kind-hearted man, and so he granted former tribal vassals citizenship, built cities, and began the construction of a city in the territory of Burdigala. The gateway to the Atlantic Ocean was designed to become the holy site of Kephisodoros later on, as a sign that he brought true prosperity. Big Flopper himself was also declared a god of war, of course, and received his holy site in Rode, for that was where he saved Massalia when the Punics invaded. Twice. Imperator Rome utterly crushed the civilization builder label. It has not only found its identity, it immediately made the jump to delivering the best civilization storytelling gameplay I have seen in any game. I am 200 years into my Massalia campaign, and I think I will actually see it through to the end date, for I have much more to build, many more characters to plot with and against, and must get more celebration of the first tyrant and his legendary general Big Flopper done. The world in Imperator Rome 2.0 feels alive, and most decisions one makes are either on a personal character level or on the macro scale. Hops feel incredibly alive with this version of the game, letting you interact with them both indirectly and directly while living their own best life. I ran Massalia as a harsh place for anyone of a different culture, but various entirely different playstyles are possible that will guide you towards a totally different civilization style. This entire story, by the way, was done without even completing a single mission tree. While I love the Massalian tree, I was so focused on truly making it my Massalia that I stopped pursuing it altogether. The characters and pops gave me enough drama already. Them pops, man. Them pops. I commend the developers behind the game for creating a world in which even I enjoy building tall and peacetime gameplay immensely. I myself did not think it could ever be done. One of the few components that I would like to see altered in the future is trade, but as it stands, it still very much fulfills the purpose it had since launch. The existing variety in mission trees is grand, and the options for telling your own stories and creating your own civilization are endless. I wholeheartedly recommend that you check out this game. I'm happy to say that this is absolutely worth it. And as always, with that being said, trust in Big Flopper and see you later, alligator.